On the morning of June 26, 2025, the calm skies over the Gulf were ripped apart in an instant. Without warning, a barrage of Iranian surface-to-air missiles screamed upward, targeting a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft on what should have been a routine surveillance flight. The first detonated close, too close. Shrapnel tore through the tail, severing hydraulic lines, alarms shrieking as the jet bucked violently. Inside, chaos reigned. A young American pilot, blood soaking through his flight suit, wrestled desperately with the controls to keep his crippled bird alive. For Washington, that single strike crossed a line no adversary had dared touch in years. A wounded U.S. airman was not just an attack on a crew, it was an assault on the nation itself. And the answer would come, cold and unflinching. From the steel deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, America's most advanced warplane roared into the dawn. The F-15EX Eagle II. Nearly 30,000 pounds of precision-guided fury under its wings, including two French-made AASM Hammer bombs. Hybrid killers that could pierce any fortress. It was a mission designed as a message, a mission some called suicide. So what became of the pilot who flew it? Come with me to find out. At precisely 5:46 a.m., a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft cut a steady line across the skies above the Gulf of Oman. It was routine, tracking shipping lanes, scanning radar returns, another quiet mission in international airspace. But that morning, Tehran had other plans. From deep within Iran's coast, operators of the Bavar 373 air defense system locked on. With a hiss and thunderous roar, a salvo of surface-to-air missiles leapt skyward, leaving white scars against the dawn. One warhead detonated just off the Poseidon's port side. The blast tore chunks of metal into the aircraft's tail, severing hydraulic lines and peppering the fuselage with burning shards of steel. Inside the cockpit, alarms howled. The aircraft shuddered violently. The crew fought the controls with grim determination, guiding their crippled bird into a desperate descent toward a forward airbase in the UAE. Amid the chaos, one young pilot sat slumped in blood, his flight suit soaked crimson. He would survive. But survival was not the message. The message was far darker. Iran had crossed a line, one that wounded not just a U.S. aircraft, but an American aviator. President Trump, standing before his National Security Council that same afternoon, made it clear, when you strike an American pilot, you strike at the very heart of the nation. And by God, the United States would strike back harder than anyone could imagine. Intelligence reports left no room for doubt. The order to fire had come straight from Tehran's power structure. This was no rogue battery, no misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of aggression. In the Situation Room, debate quickly dissolved into steely silence. Senior commanders, their faces hard with resolve, understood what had just happened. Iran had not merely damaged an aircraft, it had dared to wound an American airman, and that was intolerable. The decision was sealed. Iran's leadership would soon learn that certain lines, once crossed, carried devastating consequences. But the chosen response would be anything but typical. There would be no B-2 bombers rising from Diego Garcia, no anonymous Tomahawk volleys launched from submarines hidden beneath the sea. This strike would be sharper, crueler, and unforgettable. The Pentagon's target was chosen with surgical precision. The Ministry of Intelligence and Security in the heart of Tehran, the nerve center from which years of covert campaigns against the United States had been orchestrated. Destroying it would send a message no speech could ever deliver. The weapon of choice, America's newest tactical predator, the F-15EX Eagle II. Unlike its predecessors, the Eagle II could haul nearly 30,000 pounds of precision munitions, integrate seamlessly with drone swarms, and push beyond Mach 2.5 while wrapped in a cloak of cutting-edge electronic warfare. It was not just a fighter, it was a scalpel of steel and fire. From the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford ground crews moved with urgent discipline. Under each wing, they mounted two French-designed AASM Hammer bombs, hybrid killers fitted with American encrypted GPS and inertial guidance. These were not ordinary bombs. With solid rocket boosters, they could pierce deep into a fortress before detonating, turning steel and concrete into ash. The orders were simple yet unprecedented. fly directly into the most heavily defended airspace on Earth, and shatter Iran's intelligence headquarters with ruthless precision. In the gray light before dawn, after decades of shadow games, the United States was about to make its fury unmistakably personal. Are you still following us? Because what happens next will give you chills. Support us by subscribing to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comments. Long before sunrise, the F-15EX Eagle II cut through the salty air above the Gulf of Oman, twin engines howling with nearly 58,000 pounds of thrust. The aircraft descended until it was skimming just above the surface, a steel predator hugging the Earth at a heart-stopping 50 meters. At this altitude, the radar horizon shrank to less than 25 kilometers. For most of Iran's air defense network, the jet was a ghost, invisible unless it dared to climb. But flying that low came with its own demons. Every second demanded absolute precision. Telephone poles blurred past like jagged spears. Power lines crisscrossed the landscape in chaotic webs. Cell towers rose from village edges without warning. The pilot's eyes darted constantly between the glowing heads-up display and the black horizon, each flicker of movement a potential death trap. One mistake, one lapse in concentration, and the Eagle would be nothing more than a fireball carving into Iranian soil. Villages flashed beneath him, clusters of rooftops and narrow roads. At one point, the fighter screamed over a lonely two-lane highway, its shock waves shattering the stillness and sending a convoy of civilian trucks swerving in panic. Birds scattered in chaotic bursts, flapping desperately to escape the roaring thunder that tore the dawn apart. Inside the cockpit, the tension was suffocating. The altimeter skimmed barely above 160 feet, numbers flickering like a heartbeat on the edge of collapse. Sweat dripped down the pilot's spine, pooling beneath the straps of his harness. His gloved hands gripped the stick so tightly his knuckles whitened. Every movement was deliberate, calculated to jink unpredictably left and right, denying ground-based infrared trackers a clean lock. Each maneuver stole speed, but survival demanded unpredictability. The jet's electronic suite occasionally pulsed with ghost contacts, faint radar pings that vanished as suddenly as they appeared. Somewhere beyond the hills, Iranian operators sat scanning, their fingers itching over launch switches. The pilot knew that the first moment he climbed, even for seconds, their radars would see him. And when they did, death would come screaming on trails of fire. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. The Eagle roared across wheat fields that bent violently under its exhaust. Overhead, the stars gave way to the pale wash of dawn. Tehran was close now. At exactly 22 kilometers from the city's heart, the terrain flattened. The moment of truth loomed. To unleash his weapons, the pilot would need to climb, trading the sanctuary of the Earth's embrace for exposure in hostile skies. All that remained was the deadly ascent, the brief flare of vulnerability, and the desperate hope that Iranian missiles would be just a few seconds too late. Come with me and witness how the brave American pilot brushed against death's door. At precisely 6:17 a.m., just south of Tehran, the Eagle II began its climb. The stick pulled back, nose rising at a brutal 45 degrees. Twin GE engines roared in protest, pinning the pilot into his seat with crushing G-forces. The altimeter spun 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 meters. In that climb, the Eagle ceased to be a ghost and became a beacon, a glaring target on every Iranian radar scope. Iran's air defense network erupted. Bavar 373 operators shouted commands, launch panels slamming open as long white missiles screamed upward. From the east, the S-300's gravestone radar locked on, unleashing twin 48N6 interceptors, streaking at Mach 6, trails carving across the dawn. But the American wasn't gambling. He was calculating. At 5,000 meters, a soft tone chimed in his headset. Parameters green. He pressed the ring. Two jolts rippled through the fuselage as the AASM Hammers dropped, igniting their boosters and leaping away on fiery trails. In milliseconds, their computers latched onto encrypted GPS and inertial fixes, adjusting canards 50 times a second. They were hunters now, no longer bombs but predators. The pilot wasted no time. He inverted the Eagle, rolled hard, and pulled into a vicious split S, plunging toward the deck. G-forces clawed at his chest. Tracers clawed at the sky as Zu-23 cannons spat red fury. Shoulder-fired manpads streaked upward, seekers searching desperately for his exhaust. One Igla locked on, lunging toward the Eagle's tail, but the jet's electronic countermeasures flared, dazzling the missile into blindness. It veered, exploding harmlessly over a dusty soccer field. On the ground, short-range missile crews scrambled, firing blindly into the haze. But the Eagle was gone, back in the weeds, hugging the earth where radars lost their sight. Iranian operators cursed into headsets, their massive interceptors twisting uselessly in the upper air. Meanwhile, the two AASM Hammers continued their silent hunt. Each bomb made minute course corrections, their guidance systems weaving American precision with French resilience against jamming. Iranian electronic warfare flooded the skies with noise, but the Hammers cut through it like knives, immune to deception. The S-300's interceptors clawed downward, their proximity fuses primed, but the bomb's tiny radar signatures and insane plunge angles baffled the tracking algorithms. Warheads detonated hundreds of meters off, nothing but wasted thunder in the dawn. In less than 30 seconds, the duel was over. The skies above Tehran fell eerily quiet once more. The fighter had vanished into low-level sanctuary. The defenders had fired in vain. And now death itself was descending. Two precision-guided predators diving vertically at terminal velocity, unstoppable, indifferent to every frantic radar ping and shouted command echoing through Tehran's bunkers. The message had been launched. All that remained was impact. Don't leave yet. Come with me to see how a smart weapon destroys its target. At exactly 6:18 a.m., the first AASM Hammer punched through the rooftop of Iran's Ministry of Intelligence headquarters. Milliseconds later, its shaped-charge warhead ignited, unleashing a molten jet of copper that sliced through concrete slabs and steel beams as though they were paper. The building's fortress-like armor, designed to keep secrets safe, was suddenly useless. A heartbeat after, the second bomb struck 20 meters away. Its delayed fuse allowed it to plunge deeper into the structure before erupting in a devastating blast. The shock wave tore downward, detonating at over 8,000 meters per second. Interior walls didn't crack. They disintegrated. Filing cabinets exploded like tin cans. Their contents turned into smoldering confetti. Then came the horror engineers call progressive collapse. The fourth floor slammed into the third, doubling the weight and energy. The third crushed the second. Within 5 brutal seconds, the entire 5-story complex folded into itself. A convulsing mountain of shattered concrete and twisted rebar. Outside, glass cascaded from nearby buildings, raining lethal shards across cars and sidewalks. Civilians screamed, blood flashing in the dust. Above it all, dark plumes of smoke spiraled into the Tehran skyline, carrying with them the burned remnants of Iran's most guarded secrets. From overhead, American reconnaissance drones captured every frame, streaming the collapse back to command centers on the Gerald R. Ford and into the Situation Room itself. For Tehran's rulers, the message was undeniable. No fortress was beyond reach. Across the street, glass rained down in lethal sheets, embedding shards into parked cars and peppering sidewalks with bright flecks of blood from stunned pedestrians. Sirens wailed as emergency crews tried to push through choking traffic, their paths blocked by panicked civilians surging away from the blast zone. The air smelled of burning paper, twisted metal, and scorched concrete. Tehran's proud Ministry of Intelligence was reduced in seconds to a mountain of rubble and smoke. For Iran's leaders, the loss was not just physical. Entire archives of secrets, agent rosters, operational blueprints, and digital servers had been annihilated in a single strike. Decades of clandestine power evaporated in an instant, erased by 2 precision-guided bombs delivered with surgical cruelty. Survivors clawed through dust and steel, searching not for the living, but for fragments of data, hard drives, documents, anything that might be salvaged. But most knew the truth. The knowledge that once lived within those walls had died with them. Above, American reconnaissance drones circled silently, recording every moment in crystal clarity. The footage streamed back to the USS Gerald R. Ford, then across secure links to the Pentagon and the White House. Advisors watched in silence as secondary explosions rippled through the ruins, fuel cells and power grids cooking off in muted thunder. To them, the meaning was unmistakable. This was not a random strike, not a faceless barrage of tomahawks from over the horizon. This was a scalpel, wielded in person by a single U.S. pilot, carving directly into Tehran's heart. Back aboard the Gerald R. Ford, the Eagle II touched down with controlled finality. Heat and dust streaked its fuselage, but the jet was intact. Deck crews rushed to guide it into shelter, their faces betraying quiet awe. The canopy opened. The pilot removed his helmet slowly, calmly. He had just carried out a mission that would echo through history, a message written in ash and steel. For Tehran's rulers, there was no denying it anymore. Even their most sacred strongholds could be reached, even their most guarded secrets obliterated. No bunker was too deep, no building too secure. The strike had pierced not only concrete, but confidence itself. For America's allies, the operation was proof of resolve, that the United States still possessed both the will and the technological edge to strike exactly where it hurt most. For adversaries, it was a chilling reminder. Harm a U.S. airman, and the retribution would be personal, devastating, and unavoidable. This was more than retaliation. It was doctrine unveiled in fire, precision, speed, relentless will. When the dust finally settled, the smoldering wreckage of Iran's intelligence headquarters stood as a warning to all who watched. Cross the line, and you invite destruction through your front door. If you value clear, unfiltered stories like this one, stand with us. Subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and help us keep bringing you the truth behind the headlines. Thank you for standing with us.